Mr. Speaker, the illegal war waged by Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu in the Middle East is inflicting devastating consequences on civilians, especially children. The humanitarian and environmental toll is immense, and the economic fallout is global, driving up gas and fertilizer prices.
It is no longer just a trade dispute. Washington's unpredictable maneuvers have just triggered a global supply shock, and the shockwaves are tearing through the Canadian Parliament. While Donald Trump weaponizes tariffs and destabilizes the Middle East, blowing up energy prices worldwide, Ottawa is refusing to become collateral damage. For decades, the United States has been Canada's overwhelming trading partner. But in an era where Washington is increasingly volatile, Canada is now actively building new partnerships. The shift is profound. This is not just a passing phase. It is a structural realignment.
Disrupting critical supplies like helium used in MRIs and threatening pharmaceutical supply chains. Canadians who are already struggling with the cost of living will feel these impacts. Will the Prime Minister ensure Canada is not complicit with our arms exports in the killings of civilians and take a clear stance against this horrific war?
That line changes everything. This is code. It signals that Canadian opposition is aligning against Washington's disruption, creating a united front for sovereignty. While Donald Trump has been shaking the global system with coercion, threats, and unpredictability, Mark Carney has been doing the exact opposite. Trump wanted pressure. Carney built stability. While Washington debates tariffs, Ottawa secures alliances. The old world is gone. The old dependencies are gone. The old comfort zone is gone. The strategy requires reliable partnerships and a dense web of like-minded nations. Unlike previous administrations, the current Canadian leadership understands that geopolitical leverage requires optionality. They diversify. They build new alliances. They refuse to remain dependent. This raises a fundamental question for policymakers in North America. How does a nation protect its economy when its closest neighbor becomes a source of unilateral disruption? The answer lies in strategic autonomy, resilience, sovereignty. Sovereignty. That's what this is about. Economic sovereignty, geopolitical sovereignty, sovereignty that shrinks Washington's influence. Canada is looking at the global chessboard and recognizing that aggressive American actions, especially in the Middle East, directly threaten domestic stability. The closure of vital trade routes is not merely a distant conflict. It directly impacts Canadian consumers, farmers, and energy markets. Therefore, a profound realignment is underway. She stood firm, looking directly across the aisle. This was not a standard diplomatic deflection. It was a calculated declaration of a new geopolitical reality. Listen closely.
And Canada is also deeply concerned about the humanitarian toll that the war is taking, including our concern about the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, which is threatening global energy security and economic stability. As we have emphasized, Canada's focus is on humanitarianism, is on de-escalation, is on ensuring the unimpeded flow of energy and supplies through the Strait of Hormuz. And we urge all parties to de-escalate the conflict, and we will continue to work with G7 and like-minded countries. Thank you.
That is not commentary, that is positioning. By explicitly looking to the G7 and bypassing unilateral U.S. channels, Canada is asserting its strategic autonomy. This is about leverage. The more partners Canada has, the less vulnerable it becomes to pressure from any single country. When you consider that over 15% of global oil flows through the Strait of Hormuz, relying entirely on a volatile Washington to secure those routes is a geopolitical risk Canada will no longer accept. So, what does this mean for Canada's economy? It means the government is actively insulating its critical sectors from external shocks. Instead of waiting for American policy to stabilize, Ottawa is mobilizing a steady, confident coalition of international partners. This approach neutralizes the threat of U.S. tariffs by proving that Canada has other options, other markets, and other allies. The pivot is real. The realignment is structural. The shift is permanent. Every diplomatic move is calculated to build resilience against economic coercion, and this strategy extends directly to the domestic industrial base. When external volatility threatens supply chains, internal unity becomes the primary shield. The administration understands that foreign policy and industrial policy are now deeply intertwined. You cannot have a strong stance abroad without a fortified economy at home. The auto sector, historically dependent on seamless cross-border trade, has been a primary target of recent tariff threats. But instead of folding under pressure, the Canadian response has been remarkably resolute. The government has forged an unprecedented consensus across the political spectrum to defend its manufacturing core.
Mr. Speaker, everyone is in favor of our auto strategy. The Conservative Premier of Ontario, Premier Ford, industry, unions, consumer, everyone. And so, why don't they get with the program and get on our side?
Everyone. That is saying that internal political divisions stop at the border when Canadian industry is threatened. This united front is the defining characteristic of the new North American dynamic. When a conservative premier, powerful labor unions, and major industry players align behind a federal strategy, it sends an unmistakable signal to Washington. Leverage. That's what this is about: economic leverage, geopolitical leverage. Leverage that shrinks Washington's influence. By securing the domestic base, Canada ensures that tariffs become a self-defeating weapon for the United States. If the goal was to divide and conquer the Canadian economy, the tactic has backfired completely. Instead of fracturing under the weight of trade disputes, the industrial heartland is consolidating its resources. The strategy is clear: fortify the supply chains, secure critical minerals, and ensure that the manufacturing sector remains globally competitive. This is a profound shift in economic statecraft. It proves that a middle power can resist the gravitational pull of a superpower. Furthermore, this domestic resilience perfectly mirrors the diplomatic maneuvers on the global stage. Just as the foreign affairs apparatus bypasses unilateral American channels to work directly with the G7, the industrial apparatus bypasses traditional dependencies by building a self-sustaining ecosystem. They diversify. They build new alliances. They refuse to remain dependent. This dual-track approach forms an impenetrable barrier against external coercion. The Canadian economy is no longer playing a passive role. It is actively reshaping its destiny. The days of simply reacting to the White House are definitively over. Ottawa has recognized that in a world defined by disruption, stability is the most valuable currency, and by projecting that stability, Canada attracts international capital, secures global partnerships, and commands respect on the world stage. This is the new reality of international trade. The strategy is methodical. The execution is relentless. The outcome is independence. Tariffs lose their edge when supply chains are fortified. What happened in Ottawa today was more than a routine debate. It was a glimpse into a changing global order. If you want sharp, fearless analysis of how Canada is navigating global pressure while expanding its economic power, this is the channel for you. We break down the strategy behind the speeches, the leverage behind the deals, and the leadership behind the headlines. Mark Carney isn't just reacting to events, he's reshaping Canada's global position in real time. Subscribe to Canada SR, turn on notifications, and stay ahead of the geopolitical shifts defining this decade. And now I want to hear from you. Will the G7 successfully bypass U.S. energy bottlenecks, or is Washington's leverage too strong to ignore? Let me know in the comments below.